Hey everybody, welcome to the Housechurch video, the first one in a long time and the first one for this Revelation series that I'm really excited about our church going through. One of the questions that we are going to have with Revelation, and really you need to have it with anything you read, is how do I engage with this? What does it want me to get out of reading this? So you come to a story that starts once upon a time and you have a clue in that beginning, oh okay, I kind of know what I'm in for. Or you read the intro of something and it says, Dear John. You're like, okay, I kind of know what I'm in for. Or a document comes to you with legal letterhead with about 8 last names from a law office, and it's clear that there's really precision in the language. You sort of know what you're in for when you read the rest. So my point here is that to the question, and this is our question for today, what are we dealing with Revelation? The answer to that question is, and our light bulb is, we need to answer that question more by letting the book itself answer the question. So the question is, what do we have here? Like, as we go through Revelation, what kind of book, what kind of document, what kind of work of literature is this? And thankfully, we're not left to guess. And my light bulb moment is that the book itself, in the verses that we covered on Sunday, actually tells us exactly what the rules of engagement ought to be, what we need to be looking for, and what we need to be assuming we will find in this book. So let's talk a little bit about what those first 14 verses tell us about how to come to Revelation. The first light bulb thing that we find is like, oh, there's a pastor involved here. And this pastor is on an island. He's being persecuted. He's in prison for some sort of act of faithfulness to Jesus over Caesar. So he's being punished. We got that. That's an interesting thing to know at the beginning. It kind of frames it already. And then this pastor wants to encourage these churches to be overcomers, to resist the pressures and the temptations, the considerable pressures and temptations that are on them to compromise their discipleship towards Jesus and their following of Jesus. So we have a pastor, we have these congregations that he can't get to, and then we have a letter. This pastor is going to write a letter to this congregation, 7 congregations that he's familiar with. So we're learning lots about Revelation already, and we're only like 6 verses in. A pastor in prison, these congregations he's worried about. He's like, I can't get to them, but I got to help them make it through. And he starts writing this letter. But the letter turns out to be a sermon. In the first chapter of Revelation, it's called a prophecy. And we think of prophecy as like predicting horses, right? We think of prophecy, probably you don't think of predicting horses, but you think of like prophecy as here's what's going to happen in the future. But biblically, prophecy isn't that. It's more forthtelling. It's like bringing out from within something that's true. So when someone speaks your identity to you, maybe you're shy and somebody says, no, you are bold and bright and your words matter. They're not telling you about your future. They're just telling you the truth about reality. That's what sermons do. That's what the prophetic does. And so in Revelation, when it says, here's the prophecy, it's really better understood as not here's the inside track on what's going to happen, as if you were going to bet on horses, but rather here's a sermon to help give you strength, you in these 7 churches that badly need truth and strength. So our light bulb so far, what we're dealing with is we've got a pastor, we've got these churches, he's writing them a letter, and the letter turns out to be a sermon, but the sermon itself is written in a strange way, in a genre unfamiliar to us. Now, at the very beginning of the video here, I talked about different genres without using that name. I said, Once Upon a Time, that genre is fairy tale. I said, Dear So-and-so, that genre is letter. In the year of our Lord 1997, there was this event, well, that genre is history. So we're familiar with these different genres, and we know almost immediately when we're watching a movie or reading a book what kind of genre we're dealing with. But there's a genre here in Revelation that's not used anymore, but that was very frequently used back when this book was written in about AD 90, and that genre is apocalypse. So in some of the translations for Revelation, it will say the apocalypse of St. John. And we understand apocalypse is like, oh no, terrible things are going to happen, right? Movies like Apocalypse Now. But apocalypse actually doesn't mean that. It means unveiling, or being able to see what's really going on. And I shared on Sunday about a mini apocalypse that happened at PAC. I talked about a person at PAC praying for another person, and as they prayed for them, the veil between the physical world and the spiritual world was removed, and the person praying got to see eagles flying around the head of the person, protecting their mind and their thoughts from attack, and they got to see an angel at the right shoulder of this person protecting him. That's an apocalypse. That person had an unveiling. They were able to see something powerfully and more clearly than they could have before. And that's what this entire book is. It's a peeling away of here's what's really going on. Here's a new way to see God's protection. There's an angel there, there's eagles. God is protecting in really specific and powerful ways. And once you understand the genre of apocalypse, and you understand that it's a prophecy, and you understand that it's a letter, and you understand that there's specific people in mind that the pastor's like, oh, you know what? Like Clark or Jim are really gonna love this part. It's gonna give them so much encouragement. That there's specific people in mind when he's writing it, you have a whole lot of great tools to use to help you understand what's in the book of Revelation to help you overcome the pressures and temptations in your life. So my question was, what are we dealing with here? My answer is a lot of things. We're dealing with a pastor, congregations, a letter, a sermon, and apocalypse. And we're going to continue to unpack those in weeks to come. But for now, that gives us like an initial vantage point to be like, oh, here's what we're dealing with. Light bulb moment, oh, this is what it is. And then my conviction in all of this is that we need to remember that the main thing to take away from Revelation is a fresh vision of who Jesus is, his majesty and his might and his presence and his power. We get that in the very first line. This is the revelation of Jesus. But that Greek word of, in different translations in English, it comes across in different ways. Some it says, this is the revelation of Jesus Christ. Some says, this is the revelation by Jesus Christ. This is the revelation for Jesus Christ. And the beautiful thing is, we don't have to choose which translation is right. It's like, no, they're all right. Revelation is for, from, and by Jesus. Which means that after hearing a sermon on Revelation, or watching a movie about Revelation, or having a discussion about Revelation, or even reading Revelation, if you're not coming away with a fresh vision of Jesus and feeling strength from that vision to overcome, you're not reading the book right. So if you're reading it to feel superior, that you know what's really going to go on, or to crack the code of something that might happen in the future. Those are interesting ways to approach the book, but the book is about Jesus, front and center, beginning and end, to use the term in the book itself, Alpha and Omega, the one who was and is to come. So that's kind of our barometer, our measuring stick for this series is, are we seeing fresh things about Jesus, and are we feeling more strength to be fortified and to overcome ourselves when the various seductions of culture and pressures of culture want us to compromise our following of him. That is my conviction, that we keep Jesus front and center. I am really excited about the Jesus that we're going to meet in fresh ways, and the way that he's going to help us to be more like him in this series. Grace and peace, everybody. Have a great house church.